All right, so what I love about this song is the opening refrains, time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping into the future. This sense of time just keeps on going on. Well, as you may or may not guess, today we're talking about time as a matter of fact. And in particular, the question that we're going to ask is there a way in which we can live that's just more than time simply slipping into the future? And in fact, the title of today's series is Your Time is Not Your Own. Well, I have a confession to make. I have a tortured relationship with time. I'm 5 minutes late pretty much everywhere I go. I find myself way too busy and don't have time for the things that I think are important. I find myself at times just lazy, doing nothing at all, and then somehow I just seem to, time slips on into the future, and I find myself not really living as if time is not my own. But to make matters worse, we're in the middle of a series called Your Life is Not Your Own. And so on top of the fact that I have this tortured relationship with time, I also like a lot of autonomy in my life. That means that I don't like people saying, Jim, I need you to do this, and this, at this, and this time. I start to feel constricted and constrained. In other words, I like to have a lot of choice over how I live my life. So I'm also an educator. I teach mathematics. In fact, I see a few of my former students here in the room and current students here in the room. And all this goes together in a really bad way. Because if you're an educator, one of the things that they tell you is this: if you're going to be good, you have to be a subject matter expert, or at least your students have to think you're a subject matter expert. But the reality is, on the subject of time, I am not a subject matter expert in the least. So honestly, today's talk is as much about a sermon to me and what I have to grow in and how I have to learn as much as it is a talk to you. So I'm coming today very much in a spirit of humility. I've got a lot to grow here, a long ways to go. In fact, you're going to hear about some of my struggles as we move through the sermon today, some of my struggles with this. Well, the text that we're going to deal with comes right out of Ephesians chapter 5. If you want to head there in your Bibles, that would be great. We're also going to head to Genesis chapter 1, spend a few minutes there, and then come back to Ephesians chapter 5. But the verse that we're dealing with is the one that you see up here. Be very careful then how you live, making the most of the time. And if we want to reframe this in the language of the series that we're in, your life is not your own. So maybe you should live like time is not your own as well. All right, so I think this begs the question, though, what's the nature of time? So I have a good friend of mine here and a good friend of yours, Mr. Julian Reed here. We're going to explore what the nature of time is for the next few minutes before we hop back into Ephesians 5. From the very start of the creation of space and time, that would be Genesis chapter 1, and I need my glasses for this. Okay. So a little audio, oral illustration is going to go on here. In the opening stanzas of the creation poem, there's a statement that says, there was nothing basically. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And then God comes, and he begins to put form and shape and structure to this amorphous nothingness that we see in front of us. And we see this series of statements in the description of the creation poem. And then, next one, what's it say? Yeah, and there was evening, and there was morning the first day. And there was evening, and there was morning the second day. And there was evening and morning the third day. And there was evening and morning the fourth day. And there was evening and morning the fifth day. And there was evening and morning the sixth day. Maybe we could say that there is a certain rhythm to creation. There's a certain downbeat. There's a certain structure. There's a certain sequence embedded into this description of creation, but not only in the description of creation, but in creation itself. The sun rises, the sun falls. A day turns into a second day turns into a week turns into 2 weeks, 2 weeks turn into a month turns into a year. And the farmer knows that when springtime comes, this is a very good time to plant crops. right? And then when the summer comes, the crops begin to grow and they become mature. And at the end of summer and into fall, we begin to harvest and we begin to celebrate. And then winter comes and the ground lies fallow. It regenerates, it rests, and then spring comes. And this rhythm of creation happens over and over and over again. And God says, this is really, really good. In day 3, God said, it is good. In day 4, God said, it is good. On day 5, God says, it is good. On day 6, God says, it is good. No, it is very, very, very good. It's these kinds of times that give our lives order and structure. This sort of sequential nature of time allows us to confidently understand and predict what's going to happen. We can get up and go into work at 9 o'clock the next morning and expect everybody else to be at work at 9 o'clock in the next morning. At 11:35 on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 117 Hill House, the instructor will almost always show up and the students will show up. And we can have some good things happen. We can learn some mathematics together if you happen to be in my class at 11:35. We can know, and what this structure allows us to do, this chronology in our lives, it allows us to organize our lives and structure our lives and provides confidence so that we can live in productive manner. Right? Let's go back through one more pass of the creation story. Actually, 2 more passes. One more thing I forgot to say. On the day 7, yep, you can keep going. Day 7, God rested from all his work. And what happens when we rest? We get re-energized. We have a new perspectives. We're able to reflect and think about the way things ought to be and go back. And when day 1 hits again, we can re-engage day 1. And when day 2 comes, we can re-engage day 2 with new excitement, with new vigor, with new perspective. So rest is an important part of creation. But then we go back through day 1, and God said. Day 2, God said. Day 3, God said. Day 4, God said. Day 5, God said. Day 6, God said. And it looks like there is even more structure and perhaps, depending on your point of view, constraint imposed upon creation. But in reality, when God speaks, this is a new and different kind of opportunity. This is a new and different kind of moment. This is the moment when God begins to create something different in our lives. So on day 1, God said, let there be light, and there was light. On day 2, God said, let there be a vault between the waters to separate the water from the water. And it was so. On day 3, God said, let the water under the sky be gathered to one place and let the dry ground appear. And it was so. Day 4, God said, let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times. And it was so. And God said, let the waters teem with living creatures, and let the birds fly above the earth. And God said it was good. And God said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds. And it was so. And God said, let us make mankind in our image. And so in the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. And And God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all of their vast array. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creation that he had done. All right. Thanks, Julian. That's amazing. So what did you hear in the nature of time? I mean, I heard a lot out of that. But there's two things I want to point out. One is there's this certain downbeat, there's certain rhythm, there's certain structure, this idea called sequential time. And the Greeks, ancient Greeks, have had a word for this. They call this the chronos of time, from which we get the word chronology. But then in the middle of that, there were these moments when God spoke, the opportunity for a decisive change, a decisive moment of creation to occur. And the Greeks call this a kairos moment. And these were the moments when God brought these things together. But note that both are good. Chronos provides the stage, it provides the background, it provides the backdrop out of which God begins to create. So I just want to hear from Julian for just 30 seconds on, we talked about this ahead of time, obviously. How did you musically interpret those things?
Yeah, so in the left hand, I gave you your rhythm, your downbeat, your solidity. In the right hand, I was providing the chronos through the improvisation. And both are what God is and was doing.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Julian. Awesome. Yeah. Well, let's head back to Ephesians and see how in the world does this all fit together. So we go back to our original verse. Be careful then how you live, making the most of time. You have any wild guesses as to which Greek word, kairos versus chronos, fits in the word for time? Yeah. Making the most of the kairos. In other words, some people translate this as, be very careful then how you live, making the most of every opportunity that God provides when the potential for something new and different might exist. So if we're thinking in ways about how we're going to live our lives as if they're not our own, and in particular how we're going to live our lives where time is not our own, then this sort of notion is crucial. How do we make the most of every kairos moment that God provides us? So in order to sort of make some sense out of this, we really probably ought to read the whole passage right here. So let's go ahead and take a peek at that. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, a new phrase, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit. So how do we make the most of every opportunity and live in such a way that time is not our own? So the first thing I want to hone in on is that first phrase, not as unwise, but as wise. So let's think about what wisdom is not, first off. There are a lot of smart people in the room. There's a lot of philosophers in the room. Guess what? That's a great thing, but that's not wisdom. Wisdom is not being a great philosopher. Wisdom is not being a great theologian, even though we have some great theologians in the room. Wisdom is not being a great mathematician. I'm not saying we have any great mathematicians in the room, but it's not being a great mathematician. It's not being a great artist. It's not about performance. It's not about knowledge. And in fact, wisdom is rooted in the grittiness, the earthiness of our lives. And so we might say it like this. A wise person is a person who knows how to navigate the grit and the grime of our everyday life. The wise person is the one who knows how to relate well to a difficult person. The wise person is the one who knows how to love well. The wise person is the one who knows how to lead well. The wise person is the one who knows how to suffer well. In other words, wisdom is rooted in how we master the art of living. But there's another component to wisdom, and it's this. That is, a wise person also relates to the God who created this existence that we live in. And if that's not obvious, then we have a couple of phrases here that make this pretty clear. A parallel to be careful then at how you live, not as unwise, but as wise is. Therefore, don't be foolish, but understand what the Lord is. You can be unwise or foolish, or you can be wise and understand what the will of the Lord is. And if it's not quite clear enough, let's have one more of these phrases. Don't get drunk on wine. This is what unwise, foolish people do. They're controlled by wine and behave in kind of interesting ways. Instead, be wise, understand what the Lord is, or be overwhelmingly filled again and again and again with the power and the presence of God in the form of the Holy Spirit. In other words, what this passage is pointing to is that wisdom is rooted in the grittiness and the earthiness of our lives, and it is also rooted in the God who created this world. So we can say it maybe this way. A wise person seeks to understand that God created the world and the world that God created. So let's think about this through the lens of what we saw in Genesis chapter 1 and the kairos versus the chronos. So maybe we can think of it like this. If we seek to understand the God that made the world and the world that God made, perhaps we need to pay attention to how these things balance each other. So for example, we have kairos, structure, order, predictability. And if you're a person who likes structure and order and predictability, and you like to make lists, and you like to check off your list, you like to make lists about the list that you made to check off the list, and you like the security and the comfort and the confidence that structure and order provides, that might mean if you love that a little bit too much, you may have a difficulty grasping the necessary change, the decisive moment, the kairos moment that God provides in our life. That might be a difficult thing. On the other hand, if you're the kind of person who loves opportunities, you like new things, you like shiny things, you like different things, you sort of take opportunities as they come off the shelf here, there, and yonder, you put it into your basket with everything else, and then all of a sudden, all the chronos items in your basket, along with all these kairos moments in your basket, really serve to squeeze out the true kairos moments when God comes to us and said, no, I want you to, In other words, we don't have time for the genuine kairos moment because we love the opportunities more than the God who provides the opportunities. That's a difficult thing. So for example, you have a roommate comes to you and says, I'm really struggling with my sexuality. I don't know what to do with it. Well, I'm kind of behind on my studying right now. I got an exam tomorrow. I've got an exam next week. I've got a paper. I've got a problem set for 1:15. Can we get together next week? A friend comes to you and says, I just found my parents are splitting up. I just didn't see that one coming. All right, I'm moving next week. Oh, this one's a hard one for me. Again, I've confessed I struggle with this. I'm moving next week. Can I have some help? Oh man, how about August 2017? Would that work for you? Right, this is what happens when we love opportunity so much that it squeezes out the true kairos moments that God provides for us. So, the first thing that we can say if we're going to live as time is not your own is that there's a wise balance between chronos and kairos. And as I said, I struggle with this. So I think the next slide says, this is an illustration about how I struggle with this. So, note to self, So I grew up in Central Texas. My parents were married for 50 years. Both my grandparents, my mom and dad's side, were married for over 50 years. There's an awful lot of stability on both sides of my family, not very much divorce. I grew up in a relatively loving household. And sure, my parents have their own baggage and their own issues, but generally speaking, it's a very loving household. I had a really, really nice growing up experience. One of the things that I remember from that is dinner time in the evening. We were at the table as a family together, and we were talking about whatever we were talking about. Sometimes it was my dad's work. He was a mathematician. I was kind of doomed in that way. And sometimes it was about how to teach something, related to math. Sometimes it was my mom's involvement in the community. Sometimes it was what we were doing at school. Who knows what it was. But I remember lots and lots and lots of these times together as a family. Another very fond memory I have is of my dad playing baseball with me. Now, what you need to know is my dad had polio when he was 15, 16 years old, and consequently was disabled. The upper part of his body was fine. He was a strong man. He worked hard, but he couldn't walk. He can't walk very well, and so he can walk about as fast as we can when we are on a slow walk, right? So if he's going to engage with me in the things that I love and the things that I do, which was baseball at the time, how does he do that? He had to find creative ways to engage me. So that meant catching when I was a pitcher. It meant throwing bat and BP when I was 6, 7, 8. When I was getting older and bigger and stronger, okay, I can't throw very hard, so I'll put a ball on the end of a string and I'll spin the ball around on the string to get a little bit more velocity on it so Jim can be challenged a little bit more. In other words, he engaged me in the things that were important to me in really important and significant ways. And so when I get married, I get out of college, I start thinking about having my kids of my own and getting married. Guess what I want to do? I want to be with my family at dinner at night. I want to play ball with this son or daughter whom I might have at some point in some time. This just deep desire to pass on this stuff that I've inherited from my family to my own kids just burned deep inside of me. Now many of you know that I married Ann, sitting right back there. It didn't go well on the have kids front. And I've talked about this before. 10 years of infertility and struggle and strife ended one day when we were in Colorado Springs at our adoption caseworker's office, and she said, Jim and Ann, a healthy baby boy has been born up in Frisco, up in the mountains, which is about 2 hours from us. And he's yours if you want him. And we looked at each other and went, whoa, wait a minute. We're supposed to have a relationship with the birth mom, right? We're supposed to have time for that. We're supposed to process things. The fact that there was a healthy Hispanic baby boy born, we hadn't really talked about that. Can we really do that? Can we really be the mom and dad to somebody from a different point of view? So we said, can we have some time to talk about this? And our caseworker said, well, if you need an hour, I'd really like to know now. If you need an hour, take it. Truly. So we went into the park, which was right across the street, and we talked, and we prayed, and we cried, and we talked, and we prayed, and we cried. And just in the midst of that, there was just this sense that this is the moment. A moment, a kairos moment, even though I didn't have that language at the time, a moment that God was meeting us. And so we went and picked up James the next day, and the instant that we saw him, the instant, there was just, this is my boy. And God met us in this very powerful way. Well, I'm a busy kind of guy. I was busy then, I'm busy now, and so I was training with some of my friends to do cycling races. We had a Century on the calendar 2 weeks later. So guess what? Baby and Bucket, we hauled down to Angel Fire, New Mexico, and we do the Century with Baby and Bucket. Well, the baby wasn't on the bike. He was with Ann in the motel room. And we did that, right? I had a great time, right? And then a couple of weeks after that, school started. Well, I'm a responsible guy that I am. I don't want to let my coworkers down in any form or fashion, so I'm not going to skip class. I'm going to go to class and make sure my students are taken care of. And yeah, the days that I don't teach, maybe I'll take some time off there. And basically, I didn't miss a day of class. Right? And then I kept training. This cycling thing is fun. It's great. I'm working hard. It's fun. It's great. These are opportunities that I love. And these were embedded into my life. And so, yes, I spent time with James and then Julia 16 months later. We worked it out. We just put them to bed a little bit. And then Ann and I would eat dinner after that, after they had been put together. This is not really the model that I grew up with, but, maybe it's okay that we adapted. I don't know. It's what we did. Moved to New Haven 4 years ago. Cycling kind of is down here, but my workload it spiked. And so the great thing about working in a place like this is there's lots of interesting things going on, lots of resources, lots of opportunities, right? And so what do? You take the opportunities off the shelf and you do them and you learn things and you grow, and they're awesome. But I find myself coming home at 8:30, and the kids go to bed at 8:30, and I gotta go kiss them. Maybe they're not asleep. I gotta go kiss them. I hope they're still awake for me. Next time I gotta get at least 30 minutes with them at least. And then James starts playing basketball, which he loves, and baseball, and Julia does gymnastics, and she is in the school plays and this and that, and I find myself missing school plays and missing basketball and missing baseball, and all of a sudden, the Kairos things were lumping together. They had a little cabal going on with the Chronos things, and they were crowding out the true and genuine Kairos moments that God has designed me to have. I told you I struggle with this. Back in January, I picked up this book, the Steve Jobs biography. It's a great read. I started reading through it, and as you know, most of us know, he's a genius. And he also has a history of broken relationships right and left with almost everybody he works with or in his family. His eldest daughter and he have a very difficult relationship. At the end of the book, when he knows he has cancer and he knows that he has weeks, maybe a month or 2 or 3 to live, he has a little bit different point of view on what's important. And he says he has a younger son with a different mom than the mom of his estranged daughter. And he realizes he screwed the pooch when it comes to personal relationships. And he lives so he can go to the high school graduation of his son. That's why he lives. That's what helps him to hold on the last weeks and months. And when I read the description of this, it hit me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm 9 years into this thing with James and Julia. In another 9 years, it's going to be James's high school graduation. And I don't want to be the guy holding on, trying to make it right, because I've been the absent dad. I haven't been the dad that I had when I grew up. And so, and it's very clear. It's like, Jim, now is the time, not a month from now, not a year from now. Now is the Kairos moment for you. Because I had spent the last 9 years and, okay, I'm going to deal with this. And I have dealt with it in certain ways and found time to spend time with my kids and done the right thing. But just generally speaking, it's been a really difficult thing. So this commitment just locked in. And I'm in the very early stages of correcting some of those issues right now. So you can ask me a month or 2 or 3 from now, how's it going? And I will try to be honest with you about that. But as you and I know, making a commitment, it isn't enough, right? That's just not enough. So there's a couple other things that are pretty important to consider in all of this, in addition to wise balance. And it's going to come from this idea, this very first phrase right here, be careful then how you live. Not as unwise, but as wise. So the phrase, be careful, is the image of a judge carefully examining the evidence in a case, accurately, diligently examining the evidence so that they may be able to render a proper judgment of guilt or innocence in the case that they have. So when I hear that, be careful then how you live, I think of things as be intentional, be purposeful, be diligent, be careful in examining your life and how God has created you and the world around you. So maybe we could say it like this. Wise balance must be accompanied by purposeful planning. So here's the reality. I don't know what you think about when you think about unique creation. We're all a part of it, obviously. But what I am motivated by and what my Kairos moment is, it may be different than what Julian's is. It may be different than what Owen's is. It may be different than John's is. So we have to pay attention to who we are. We have to reflect and think about that. Well, how do you reflect and think about that? Well, embedded in the description of creation in Genesis 1 is this idea of rest. And so my wife, as she says it this way, rest is a space and an opportunity to reflect and think about how God has made you and how God might direct you in the moment. So what does purposeful rest look like? Yeah, so Tour de France. These are 3 American winners of the Tour de France. The guy on your left is Greg LeMond. He's won it 3 times. Lance Armstrong in the center has won it 7. Floyd Landis on the right has won it once. Well, except for the little itsy-bitsy fact that Floyd and Lance were sort of caught doping and they sort of got their title stripped from them. But they're the 3 American winners, depending on how you count that. So here's what you got to know about the Tour de France. You're going to ride 21, 22, 2,300 miles over 23 days. 21 out of those 23 days you're going to be on the bike, which means you're averaging 100 miles a day or more. And some of those are very intense time intervals. They're going to last an hour. They're anywhere between 10 and 40 miles, which means that there are days where you're going to ride 140, 180 miles on the bike. Now, 21 stages out of 23 days. That leaves 2 days for rest. So what do you think they do on the days of rest, right? They could be, no, that's not what they do actually. They get out and they ride 40, 45 miles. Now, I don't know about you. Is that your idea of rest, riding 40, 45 miles? Well, probably not. But the reason that this happens is they ride at a relaxed pace. It allows the lactic acid to be flushed out of their body. They have camaraderie with their team. It's just sort of this, it's both a physical recharging and a mental recharging that goes on. And then they develop strategy for the next set of stages that are about to occur, how they're going to deal with those as a team. So my point is this: rest should be purposeful. And that differs for all of us because we're all created uniquely and differently, right? So for some of us, maybe it means, maybe that's what it means. Maybe it means getting on the bike like Paul did and ride 25 miles yesterday. For other people, maybe it means I need to go be with people because when I am with people, they encourage me and I draw energy from them. For other people, it is I am not going to be with people. There's no way I can be with people because they drain me. The point is we need purposeful rest. And in the midst of that space of purposeful rest, we're going to have the ability to reflect and think on how God has created us and try to figure out how we're going to wisely use the time in front of us. All right, next slide. What's the next slide? Ann, yeah. All right, so it's not me. That's not me. So let me tell you about how Ann thinks about this. And I have to use Ann as an example because I am still in process on all of this. So here's the deal. Ann works 30 hours a week. She's an occupational therapist. She also basically runs the household, which means those two things together, that's like a huge thing. If it were up to me to pay the bills, we'd be broke right now because I just lose track of details. Yes, I do as a mathematician. Yes, I do. We'd be broke. If I had to feed the kids, they'd probably have type 2 diabetes at age 12 because we'd be going to McDonald's so many times a week, right? So in other words, running the household, if I'm in charge of this, I help out. Believe me, I help out, but it would be a disaster if I'm the person in charge of this. In other words, Ann's got a lot on her plate to manage the house. Sometimes in good fun, she says to manage me and to deal with her job as well. So when we get an email, ECV sends out an email and says, hey, we'd love for you to go help us pick up trash on Saturday, Easter weekend. And then Carmen texts Ann and says, Ann, could you come down and help out the Roots group picking up trash, on the green down here on Easter weekend? And, I see that email. And sorry, Josh, it ain't going to happen, right? Here's the reason why, right? So the busy week, what happens on Friday night? Well, I'm either at work late or I'm recovering when I get home. And then on Saturday, well, the kids got, James has got basketball, Julia's got play dates, then James got a play date after that. Oh, by the way, we don't pay quite enough taxes up in Woodbridge, so we have to take our own trash to the dump, so we got to make dump runs. And then maybe there's a project around the house that we need to do, and so you can kind of see where this is all going, right? And then, oh, by the way, there's supposed to be some rest in here, so I need to get on my bike and get a workout in. And it's not 40 miles, it's, a lot less than that. So I've got to get a workout in to sort of begin to recharge a little bit, I hope to. And so for me, it's just ain't going to happen. Well, during Lent, Ann's not me. Ann's not me. She's more generous than I am and more thoughtful than I am in some ways. So during Lent, she says, okay, the thing that I need to do is I need to get up just a little bit earlier in the morning, and I need to use the time when there is nobody else up to do some things that rejuvenate and help me reflect a little bit. So she's been reading a little bit. She's been watching some parenting videos. This whole thing of how do we take the things that we find important in our own lives and how do we help our kids sort of own these and distill these? How do we help our kids follow God? How do we help our kids understand how God has made them? All of those kinds of conversations she's been thinking on and reflecting on. Who are we? How are we uniquely created? And how are our kids uniquely created? And then the text from Carmen comes. So here's how Ann thought about this. She said, we value relationships with families in our neighborhood, almost all of which are parents of kids. So Julia on Saturday has a play date scheduled with one of our neighborhood friends. It's important to support roots. That's a good thing. It's important to serve people in the community. That's a really good thing. It's important for our kids to be with people that are different than they are. And there's a higher probability that's going to happen down here on the green than in our front yard, right? So maybe this is a good thing. So the point is, she said, all right, let's shift the play date with our neighborhood friend. Let's let Julia take her friend, and let's go down. They can play together while we pick up cigarette butts on the green. So that's exactly what they did. The neighborhood friend had a great time because she was hanging out with Julia. They were able to engage in this act of service. And so what I see about this is, it actually didn't decrease the busyness in our life that day. But it was a Kairos moment for Ann and Julia in the midst of it. And because of the reflection, because of the purposeful planning, she was able to engage it. Okay. All right, one more thing to think about. Okay. So if we're going to live as time is not our own, we have to have this wise balance. We have to do purposeful, some people say plotting, planning, and then there's this sneaky phrase in there, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. So this is pretty much a loaded phrase. All right? So let's try to see if we can make some sense out of it. So the first thing to focus on is the making the most of every opportunity. So this is an image, it's an economic image where people are lining up to intensely buy things. There's a scarcity of a commodity of some kind. In this case, Kairos moments. And the idea is, when you have a chance to buy a Kairos moment, you should buy it. Now, I don't know if you paid attention to the Tesla unveiling a week ago Thursday. Two nerds in the room, that would be me and Matt, paid attention to that. Right, so the Tesla, they sell electric cars, usually $75,000 a pop and up, and they unveiled a consumer version for only $35,000 for the base model, right? So they had 500, 800 people lining up not to buy one, to put down a deposit a week ago Thursday, the 31st, for a car that people had never seen before. And that they anticipated that it would bring change in their life and maybe in the lives of people around them. There is this intense making the most of every opportunity going on to put down a deposit for a Tesla. And after a week, 325,000 people, after 1 week, 325,000 people put down a $1,000 deposit for a car that they have never seen and never driven, with just the mere hopes that in the end of 2017, and all the analysts are saying ain't going to happen, a year and a half, 2 years, maybe 3 years out, they'll eventually get this greater good in their life as they perceive it. That's the force of the making the most of every opportunity. Now, there's this pesky little phrase called, it says, because the days are evil. What does that mean? So what's going on in this passage is, we know that at creation, God said creation is very, very good, right? But there's a little bit of a problem after creation. You get to chapter 3 in Genesis, and we realize that we all make mistakes. And not only do I make mistakes, but you make mistakes, and people not even in this room make mistakes. So there's this brokenness that pervades the world that we find ourselves in today. It is not all good, unfortunately. In addition to that, earlier in Ephesians, Paul says this world is ruled by the prince of the air, i.e. not by God in every situation, in every context. And in fact, not only is the world broken, there are some things that are set against God as a matter of fact. Hence, the world is evil. So what God promises is this little, the days are evil is a little bit of a euphemism for, or a statement say, yeah, that's what it's like now. But God is large and in charge. And at one point, he will recreate and put back together and make things in the fashion where all of it will be able to be said, it is good. He will recreate in the fashion of Genesis 1. So there's a temporariness, there's a fleetingness to this because the days of evil, but yet there is a reality to it. And so I think when we glue together this intense buying economic activity with the days are evil, maybe we can think of it like this. These are moments to seize the kairos moments. They are few and far between in the world that we live in. But when we seize them, this is the opportunity for in those small moments, God to begin to do something new and something different. In other words, heaven can come to earth in those small moments. Yes, we are waiting the time when God will fully remake and fully recreate the world we live in. The kingdom can come, the heaven will come to earth, and Jesus will be made known in those small moments. I think that's the force of what this phrase means. In other words, we could translate this as, we did this already. Seizing these fleeting opportunities to do good. But of course, there's risk involved because let's face it, there are pieces of this world that are not only broken, but set against God. And if we do our best to seek and pursue and understand the God of creation, then sometimes we will interface with these things that are set against God. All right, so let me tell you how I've wrestled with this. My first job out of graduate school, I taught at the United States Military Academy, which is in West Point, New York, about an hour and a half from here. And for Ann and I, this was a season of a lot of firsts in our life. First real job, first job that actually paid anything, because out of grad school. First house that we bought, this is when we actually tried to start having kids was then, so we were kind of excited on the front end of that. The first time that we had lived in the Northeast, a lot of firsts. And I remember that first September that we were there. I mean, it was a beautiful Indian summer. It was the end of September, beginning of October. And I was standing outside talking to an older gentleman named Jim McTammany. And I love this. Because I grew up in the country. I didn't grow up with neighbors. And so it was great just to be able to, I've got somebody that I can actually sort of talk across the fence with. And it's sort of something that was inside my soul that I really wanted and I hadn't really grown up with. And Jim and Felicia McTammany were the matriarch and the patriarch of this great Catholic family, lots of kids, Irish Catholic family, lots of kids, lots of grandkids, well loved by their family and by the neighborhood and people in the community. Well, Jim had been having some health issues. Now, he's a guy at the end of life. He had been in the hospital, which was just a block away for a few days, but things seemed to be looking up. And he had come home from the hospital that morning or maybe the previous day. And so we're standing outside on this beautiful, gorgeous September day, and the sun's going down, and just colors exploding in the sky. The trees are alive with color. The fields are ablaze. I mean, it's just really sort of one of those magical fall moments. And we're just having this conversation. I don't even remember the details, but just about life. And I remember in the middle of that conversation, this question popped up in my mind, and it was, have you made your peace with God? I mean, I know around ECV, this is kind of a common thing for a lot of people. It's not a common thing for me, right? This sense, there's this question in me that I feel like I need to ask Jim McTammany. He's clearly at the end of life. Things are looking up. I'm not too cool with that. I'm not too comfortable with this question. Makes me a little bit nervous. I don't know how he's going to react, right? I don't know him that well, but I'm having this moment. I think it's this Kairos moment right there, just in the conversation. Without that, I don't really need that question. And so I'm a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit nervous about it. So I do what you do, right? I'm going to pray about it. So I sort of got out of the conversation. I sat in my easy chair that night praying, God, oh, wow, if you gave this to me, can you make another opportunity? Woo, is this really you, God? I don't know. And this little WWE, little wrestling, as we say in Texas, was happening with me and God, right? I'm not sure about this, God. Can you make it clear? As if it wasn't clear. Can you make it clear, God, right? And so I prayed about it. I'm doing the good thing, right? I'm doing the safe thing. I'm doing the structured thing. I'm doing the Chronos thing in that moment, at least. So the next day comes. I'm still really disturbed by this, right? I mean, this is really bothers me. So I sit again at night, sit in my easy chair. I'm talking to God about it. Mate, can you give me a way we can sort of ease back into the conversation, God, in a way maybe it's a little bit. At least it's better for me. I don't know about you, but it'd be better for me, right? And so I'm having this conversation with God, and the window's open, facing the McTammany house. It's a warm day still. I hear a lot of commotion over there. A lot of people coming and going. I go, wow, we got a lot of family in town, I guess. I guess they're having a party because he's out of the hospital. I don't know. And so this happens again, right? The next day, I pray. I still can't reconcile what to do in all of this. And so and there's a lot of people at the house next door. So I asked Ann, I said, what's up? What's up with the McTammanys? She said, Jim, did you not know? Jim McTammany passed 2 days ago. He passed. My Kairos moment was fleeting. It's irretrievably gone. Now, I don't know what was on the other side of that question. I don't know. I assume he and Felicia, the matriarch and patriarch of a great Catholic family, I assume he is a follower of Jesus. I'll only assume that. So maybe on the other side of that question would have been the answer, yes, Jim, and here's how I've made my peace here at the end of life. And I could have had this moment where I learned something, the kingdom would have come in my life because I would have learned something from him. Or maybe I would have heard him say, I just I basically have, but I'm worried about Felicia, I'm worried about my kids, and we could have had a moment, and maybe I could have been an encouragement to his family later. Who knows what was on the other side of that question? I don't know, other than the kingdom of God was on the other side of that question, and I didn't seize the moment. So, where does this put us all today? We've got this idea of purposeful planning, seizing an opportunity, and the balance that wisdom provides. And I think the reality is those of us who love the Chronos, the purposeful planning will probably come pretty easily. Those of us who love the opportunity to seize the moment, the carpe diem, will come pretty easily. But the reality is that both of these must exist in tension together. So where are we today? If we think about this economic idea, anytime we make a choice, there's something that economists tell us is something called opportunity cost. And if we choose to do one thing, either via planning, thought, reflection while we rest, or we choose to do something in the moment because we sense that this is God's moment right now for me, however it happens, there's going to be a cost to that. There's going to be risk involved. And so one of the themes that's going to come out, has come out in this series, and will continue to come out, is there's this theme of surrender. God, I give all of me to all of you, and you give me all of yourself back, however you want to do that. And so some questions to help us think about what that might look like tonight. Do you sense that there's anything out of balance in your life? Are there any opportunities that exist in front of you right now that maybe you should seize, you should grab hold of because they might be gone? Maybe you're just in need of discernment. You say, yes, I think there's something going on. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I need some discernment. I need the filling of the Holy Spirit again and again and again, the power and the presence of God in my life to be able to tease this out and to make sense out of this. For some of us, we need to think long and hard, and this is me, about spaces in my life for rest and reflection, time with my family, time with me and God, to be able to discern and understand how God has made the world, how he's made me, and how I'm to engage it. And then there's some of us that maybe you're feeling this a little bit of a nudge right now, and not sure about this presence and this power of God in my life, this filling of the Holy Spirit, as it's called in this passage. And so maybe this might be tonight a chance for the very first time to say, okay, God, I don't know what this looks like. There's a little bit of a risk for me here right now, but I choose you for the first time in my life right now in this moment. And then lastly, not up here, but lastly, there's some of us in the room. We've said yes to Jesus before. We said yes to Jesus before and before. We said yes to Jesus before and before, but we still need the power and the presence of God in our life in a way that doesn't quite exist right now. So I don't know where you find yourself tonight. The worship team, if you want to come up now, would be a good time for that. I don't know where you find yourself tonight, but if you want to talk with somebody, we're going to sing a few songs together, and we're going to have, in a few minutes, over here on the side, we're going to have some people to pray with. So we encourage you to do that. While the worship team sings, you might just want to simply sit there and just you and God only, talk to God about some of this, and that would be great. And then if you want to come and take communion, this might be your first expression of I choose you, Jesus, to come, you and God right here to take communion. You're going to take a piece of bread that stands for the broken body of Jesus. You may want to dip it in the cup that represents the blood of Jesus. And this may be the ultimate Kairos moment for you when God begins to invade and pervade all of who you are. For the first time, or for the second time, or for the 1,000th time. So however it works for you, we invite you to sit before God, in the presence of God, to come in communion, or in a few minutes, we'll have people to pray with over here.